Hello, leaders. It's Arlene Smith, and welcome back. I am so glad that you're here because you being here just proves that you are 100% committed to being that outstanding leader, that leader who's managing the complexities of our healthcare workforce. And that is super exciting to me because I feel like here, while we're here in life school, you know this, as leaders, we have a duty and a responsibility. And that's really, really important when it comes to managing our teams and supporting our teams. I mean, to lead a workforce where you expect them to be compassionate and caring despite what happens to them, it is not going to come from chance. It's really going to come from leaders who understand what is needed and providing to those people. So that is why I'm so excited that you're here today, because I feel like we don't do a good job in the field of healthcare when it comes to teaching leadership. I mean, we don't do a good job in really any sector, I think, when it comes to teaching leadership. But in healthcare, it really matters. We take care of people who turn around and take care of people. So it's so incredibly important. And when I think about who does training really well, I think of the Navy SEALs. Of course, they do training amazingly. You know, back in February of 2023, I picked this up. It's a History Channel, sort of everything you need to know about the Navy SEALs. And I picked it up I think I was in the supermarket because I have always been fascinated by the Navy SEALs. 100% fascinated, like really trying to understand what it takes to actually do this amazing and important work. And they do this so well when it comes to training and education. So would it surprise you to learn that, these are all volunteers that sign up to be a Navy SEAL. They absolutely have to meet both aptitude tests and they have to absolutely meet physical requirements. So it's not like you just go in if something you're dreaming and hoping to do. You have to meet both of those. And I think it was so fascinating when I went into this book to sort of discover like everything about the Navy SEALs is about 60% of the people drop out. They don't even make it all the way through. That is how challenging and grueling it is. And what I learned from one of these little articles was that it costs about $500,000 to put somebody through the Navy SEAL school. And when you think about that, you think, wow, that's a lot of money. But I want you to think about it differently. You're essentially training this elite special force unit to handle any given situation, these highly stressful, extremely stressful situations, and to do it right every single time. And that is going to come with extensive training. And you're not going to get there by doing nothing about it. So I will tell you the training really is designed to push those candidates to their absolute limits, both physically and mentally. And what I think is fascinating about, the Navy SEALs and their training is they make it really easy for you to quit. All you have to do is ring that bell and sort of declare that you're out. And then you're out of the candidacy. And so I would challenge you to really think about this, because when I thought about this article on the Navy SEALs, one of the things that really stood out for me is how they talk about the fourth week of sort of the training, which is also known as Hell Week. And one of the most fascinating things about Hell Week that really struck home with me is it actually starts at the stroke of midnight. That is the worst possible time to be going through training. And the candidates are not getting any more than 6 hours of sleep a night. And the fatigue is so extreme and so high, it takes the candidates to a point where they really begin to start hallucinating. And so I want you can kind of get this picture of what this is really like, the gruelingness of the training, because it's so important to have sort of this picture of what goes into getting these special ops fully trained, ready to go, can be plopped in any situation and to be able to handle it really, really well. And for those that know the program, they also know the grueling aspects of it. and how the program in and of itself really just naturally helps to support that the people that really can't do it or can't cut it or can't make it, they wind up just ringing that bell and getting themselves out. So I want you to think about what we just learned with the Navy SEALs, because one of the things that I loved is in sort of their training center, they have it in the on a plaque on the wall that the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. And I love that idea, right? It's the whole entire basis of the education and the training is really designed in the preparation piece, right? It's preparing that elite team of special forces for what potentially could happen. And so when you think of healthcare, I want you to think about leadership in healthcare and those opportunities where we don't do it so well. And I want you to think about the correlation between what your teams do. And yes, they're not going into war and they're not going into combat and they're not being put in these highly sort of dangerous, stressful situations. But I would argue that in healthcare, your teams are being faced every single day with uncertainty, unpredictability, highly stressed situations, having to make decisions, clinical judgments, just decisions in the blink of an eye, very quickly and rapidly. And that does not come from people that don't have a leader that's present and is providing them with the support so that they can continue to thrive. That's the opportunities that we have in the field of healthcare. It's really to engage our leaders to really start thinking from a lens of how can I do this differently? And again, I'm going to remind you, when it comes to leadership, it is 100% learned through practice. That's how we do it. We do it over and over again, and we get better and better. And a big part of this is you being vulnerable enough to say, that's it. I know I need to work in this area. And this podcast today is completely devoted on your leadership development. And you will hear me say it over and over again. The best leaders, the exemplary leaders, the ones that can lead teams of people and they can follow behind them in droves, those are the individuals that have put focused attention on their own development plans. They've looked at themselves inward and they've self-reflected and they've really looked at it from the lens of, what do I need to do consistently in every situation with every single person? Because when it comes to leadership, it's really easy to be inconsistent. Like today I'm really good, tomorrow I'm not. So part of being an exemplary leader is you having this ability to really lead from a place where you can do it consistently day in and day out. And it just makes me think a lot when it comes to education about this principle called the Peter Principle. And I've thought about this for so many years. Boy, I mean, this principle has been around since like 1969. It was actually invented by Lawrence Peter and Raymond Hull, and it was done through observations. What they saw was sort of this correlation that they observed when they saw in leadership, that people tended to be promoted to their level of incompetency. And you're probably thinking, what? What do you mean by that? Well, traditionally, when you think about promotion and how people rise up in an organization, it's based on the performance in their current role. It's not based on their ability to handle the responsibility of the role they're going to go into. And so I know for me, I think about there were many times in my leadership career where I really thought about this principle because there were times when, number one, I experienced it firsthand, and I was put into a position very early in leadership where I was responsible for managing multiple different departments, and I just did not have the skills to be able to do that, and how I missed the mark. And thankfully, through a reorganization, I got a different opportunity to really hone down, focus, and really learn those skills and to do it differently and better. But there was also a point in time when I can't help but think of a really trusted mentor. Her name was Nancy. And, I remember thinking this like it was yesterday. I wanted an opportunity that came open, and there were people in the organization that kept saying to me over and over again, are you going for that job? You're going to be perfect for that job. Like everybody thought that I would be perfect for the job except for Nancy. She was the one that said, this is my fear. My fear is I see inconsistency. And if I were to see you being able to navigate and do this really well in any given situation, I would say, yeah, you're ready for that next leap forward. But I think you need to spend a little time and you really need to focus your development. And, we'll keep looking for that next opportunity for you. And boy, was she right. Because I took that time out to really make sure I was being consistent in my actions. And guess what? That person that was hired for that job, they didn't work out. So I wound up getting that job anyway. And in the meantime, then I was prepared for that position. So I can't stress that enough. And I don't want this to dissuade anybody from taking a leap of faith and taking an opportunity. Just know what you're getting into. And when you think about your own leadership competencies, how you're developing some of those core competencies that are really needed for you to be effective, like being able to create strategic plans and being able to execute them, really having good, strong skills on time and organizational management. If you don't have some of these core competencies in place and you're trying for a position, it's going to be a real challenge for you. And you're going to look at yourself and think, why am I bothering? I'm not good at this. And again, of course you're good at it. That's why you've been selected to be a leader. You've proven that you can do it. So you have to just think about it and set yourself up for success. It is 100% possible. And when I think of healthcare, I think of all the times that I've seen this happen in healthcare, right? A nurse is an outstanding and exceptional nurse, right? But we're going to put that person in a supervisory role or a unit manager role and not give them the tools and resources so they can be effective. And they struggle and they can't lead their teams and they can't manage those complex situations. So I'm going to remind you, as a leader, this is like the beginning of the work that you need to do. Like you need to have a development plan and you need to be thinking about how you're going to handle these things that are at that higher level, and you're going to do it consistently over and over again. Because with the Peter Principle comes a lot of consequences. And you've probably seen these firsthand from your own experience when you've looked at somebody in leadership and thought, now, how did that person get in that role? Right? I know what you're thinking. We've all thought that at different points in our lives. But there are consequences, right? You'll see not only with yourself a decreased level of productivity, but you're going to find that you are lacking sort of efficiency. And you're not only going to see it in yourself, you're going to see it in your people because they're looking upwards and they're like, what happened here? You're going to see your ability to make sort of like poor decisions or maybe a lack of strategic decision making, right? That is 100% possible. And then with your staff, they might start experiencing things like, like having a low morale or really just thinking like, I don't know if I want to do this. You're going to start seeing turnover climb in your organization. And again, that's a telltale sign that, something is going wrong and you have to look inward, right? I'm going to have to slow my pace down like we've talked about in all of these sessions and really look and self-reflect and look inward and look and see, how can I do this differently? So the good news is, it's like everything in life school, there's a solution to everything. Part of it is making sure that you have sort of a robust talent management program in place. And if you do not, which I expect many people do not have robust talent management systems in place that are going to help guide and support them, I'm going to challenge you to really think about, don't wait on this. This is your opportunity to grow you, to be the best version of you, so that every night when your workers go home, they're saying to their loved one, I am so glad I had this person as my boss because I had such a horrible day. And if I didn't have them in, that support, I don't know what I would do. I don't think I could do this great work. And that's why this is so important, because we need to retain every single one of our healthcare workers. That's the secret. We, to keep people that are wired to care, that are caring and compassionate. This is their nature. This is everything they are. It's going to require leaders really stepping up and learning different strategies and ways. So I will tell you, it always starts with I've said this for years and years and years when I've mentored people or had one-on-one coaching conversations with people. It starts with you looking inward and looking at your strengths. That's the easiest way to do it. Listen, if you're looking at all the things that you do poorly or inconsistently or not well, it's going to be demotivating to you, and you're going to feel like, I don't know if I could do all this hard work. But if you start from your area of your strengths, it's very different. It's a much easier climb to get to consistency in every situation. And then that's going to give you the fuel and the passion to want to do really, really well and to excel. So I will tell you, Marcus Buckingham has incredible resources on sort of knowing your strengths and going from a position of strengths. But I will tell you something that I have used for a very long time, and that is the brief strengths test that is available online through the University of Pennsylvania. And I absolutely love this test. The actual original work was credited by Chris Peterson, who works at the University of Michigan. And I really, really love this work. First, you have to register as a user. So you have to pick a username, you have to pick a password. Then you have to remember, because if you want to repeat it over a period of time to see, am I seeing skill development? Am I getting stronger at certain things? Am I seeing sort of this natural sort of flow? You're going to have to remember what your username is to be able to do that. But it asks you a series of questions. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you, which is the big, big, big secret. You got to be honest with yourself. You are not going to win any special awards or prizes by filling out the questionnaire in a way where you're imagining the way you want to be. The whole secret of the questionnaire is you looking at yourself from a lens and saying, I'm going to answer these questions on this scale, and I'm going to answer accurately. And listen, if you're struggling with this, I'm going to tell you, go home, talk to a partner, a spouse, somebody that's a trusted friend, maybe it's a sibling, and just ask the person, hey, do you see me doing this? I'm struggling with making sure I'm landing this in the right way. And so it's going to give you different categories when your results come out. And that's what I absolutely love about the results and the report. I have mine here today. I actually took it. I think the last time I took it was back in 2019. So it was a while, and I was able to sort of look at my reports and those differences. But the thing that I really love about this is it takes all those sort of attributes, all those important characteristics, and it groups them by categories based on your results. So it will give you results that will say, you're always doing this, or you're usually doing this, or you do this half the time, or occasionally, or rarely and never. And I'm going to tell you what I do is I look at the full results. So don't shortchange yourself. Go through the exercise, look at the results. And when you're looking at those results in those top two tiered categories like that, always and usually, what I want you to think about is consistency. Do I do these in every single situation? Like from person to person, from situation to situation. And if your answer is not a resounding absolutely yes, then you got some work to do, right? Because your goal is to gain consistency. So for all of those other areas, that half the time, occasionally, and rarely, if you have things that fall into those categories, really look at them. Look at them from a lens of, what are those things that when I see that are really going to impede me from really getting my team and leading them to high performance? That's what I want you to think about because it's so incredibly important. And when I did mine, I was giggling at myself at my results because, there from time to time, I got to say my rarely and never really don't improve much, which just goes to show that some of this has to do with your personality and who you are as a person, right? Your preferences and what you're drawn to. So I'm going to share two of my results because I think it's just important to really talk about it in an open and vulnerable way. So two of my traits that kind of fall down to that rarely and never category. The one is prudence, which is your ability to show caution and discretion. And number 2 is self-regulation or self-control. And I laugh about this a little bit. I still giggle. I get a little smile on my face because you have to know me. I'm a very spontaneous extrovert who is full of high energy. I mean, this is just kind of like how I see the world. People often say to me, like, how do you keep going? Like, you've been going, and you're still going, right? It's just who I am, right? So when I think of these 2 traits, this ability to like show caution and discretion, right? Or to self-regulate and show self-control, part of me realizes that some of this is that I'm predisposed to areas of development here where for somebody like me, this is going to be a challenge for a long period of time, right? And so you have to know you. And I would tell you, like, a small step is really to look at this list when you get your report and look at it and say, what's 1 or 2 of the areas that I'm going to focus on and I'm going to commit to, and I'm really going to think about how I'm going to make sure that I have a really good development plan, a leadership development plan to kind of close some of those gaps. And so you can get feedback from people. I would say absolutely, like, create a safe space where you let people know where you're vulnerable and you show people that growing doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. Growing and focusing development on making yourself, develop your skills in such a way that you achieve mastery, that's a really amazing thing, right? And so sometimes having a conversation with a team member by simply just saying to them, listen, I'm working on my own professional development when it comes to leadership competencies. And I've got a couple of these here that I want to share with you because I really want to get your perspective on areas where if you were looking at this list of these things that I'm not always doing on a regular basis, is there 1 or 2 that stand out for you that you feel like if you could lock these down, boy, it would make a difference in me managing you, right? There's nothing wrong with saying that. So the other thing that I would tell you is absolutely in your organization, if you have the ability to get 360 feedback, then you can use that too, because you can get it from all different sources. You can get it from your direct reports, from peers, from people outside that are working with you as stakeholders, and you really get a blend of what that looks like. Here's going to be the one thing that I'm always going to caution you on when it comes to getting 360 feedback is number 1, you got to mentally prepare yourself for it. You're going to see things in that feedback where you're going to be like, I cannot believe that somebody says I do this and this, right? You're going to have this sort of defensive mechanism that just naturally happens. And don't be embarrassed about that, okay? So if your organization delivers 360 feedback to anybody in leadership, please, please, please make sure if you're at the top of that organization, you're making sure that part of the training and the development of your teams in the execution of that feedback includes coaching them on how do you receive that feedback and what should you be looking at and how should you do that? Because that doesn't always happen. And sometimes that in and of itself can really cause tremendous stress to somebody that's new in leadership. So I'm also going to remind you that, in life school here, when you take a responsibility of being a leader, again, you have a duty and a responsibility to develop your skills. So if you're in an organization and you feel like you have limited opportunities to have development opportunities, think about how you can work with associations that you are associated with in healthcare. They often offer mentors or your ability to mentor with a person. That person will help guide you. And, there were many times in my career where I had people that sponsored me. They took on that role where they weren't really a mentor, but they really believed in me and they cleared the way for me to have different opportunities. I also had people that were mentors that had some really difficult conversations with me and said, like, I know you're not seeing it this way, but perhaps if you look at it from this perspective, it might open your perspective a bit. And that is so incredibly important when it comes to leadership. But I also love learning from everything here while we're in life school. And one of my favorite things to learn from is nature. Because all of us can go out in nature and we can learn from what we see. It's so easy to do. And when I think about leadership and I think of the characteristics of leadership and I think about different animals or insects in sort of in nature, I think about the ants and how I'm always marveled about ants. So today's lesson, it's all about ants. And when you think about like the design of ants, like they are significantly stronger than they appear. And that's why I say, like, it makes me naturally go to a place of thinking about leadership because very much so, just like ants, you are stronger than you appear when it comes to your ability to lead your teams. And even when you're knocked down or your teams are knocked down, your ability to lift people up and to get them on all, two legs again and to push them forward and to have them believe in you, that's 100% possible. But there are some characteristics of ants that, in my opinion, just make it very, very simple to just really think about how it relates to leadership. Number one is just that if you look at ants, I mean, my kids had ant farms growing up. We all looked at ants. Like when I was a kid, I looked at ant hills all the time. But when you look at ants, like to their core, right? One of the things that you notice about them is the spirit of cooperation and this division of labor. Like it is so resounding to me. They are highly organized. Like as a colony, their structures, like they all have different tasks. Some are foraging, some are taking care of babies, some are building the nest, some are in defense mode. Like they're all doing different things. And the cooperation within the colony, that is what takes them to this place where they are highly efficient and they are highly effective. Like the colony just all works in uniform, right? So when you think about that, it's incredible, right? That's a leadership trait we all have to strive for. The second one is the ability of ants to sort of be adaptable and resilient, right? I mean, of course, that's a core leadership trait. Like if you can't adapt and be resilient, how in the heck can your team members do it? And when you think about ants and their ability to adapt in their environment, they do it all the time. And they overcome obstacles and setbacks. They reorganize activities. Like they're not sitting around just trying to figure out how are we going to do this. They just spring in action. It just happens, right? So again, when it comes to leadership, that's something that you're striving for. You should 100% be striving for that in terms of your competency. Number 3, communication and coordination. Like all you have to do is look at the way ants communicate with one another, right? They communicate through vibrations and touch and pheromones. Absolutely. That's how the colony communicates what they're doing. And they're sharing information, they're making decisions, they're sort of reworking and restructuring and reassigning things based on what's happening in their surrounding. And so as a leader, I'm going to challenge you to really think about your communication techniques. If the communication dies at your line, it dies on the vine. Your people will not get it. They will not be informed. They'll be frustrated. And they'll be saying to themselves, why does this continually happen? Right? In healthcare, the work is really hard. So you communicating to your teams every single day, this is what's happening today. This is what we can expect, right? That is you showing that you respect them and you care about them enough to communicate to them. You're sharing to them so that they can adapt. But if nobody says anything to them, how can they do that? I will never forget once going into an organization and doing focus groups. And I remember saying to a nurse, like, explain to me how, you get communicated, how someone communicates to you that you have admissions and discharges. And they're like, oh, we ask the housekeepers. The housekeepers know everything. And I say, yes, the housekeepers. Oh, yeah, they know everything. Their boss tells them everything, but we don't find it out. You know when I find out? When someone's in the room and they say, your patient has arrived in the room. So again, I'm going to challenge you as leaders to really think about this from that perspective of the person, right? The healthcare worker that you're taking care of. Like your failure to communicate, and again, I want to believe this does not come from a place where you're like, I can't wait to withhold information. No, you're so busy, you're running around, right? And running from meeting to meeting, building in that little small opportunity to come out of that morning meeting and then deliver key information and then go to that next one, you're going to have to build and stack that time in, because I'm going to trust you, everything else is going to eat it up. Whether it's a complaining family member or something that's happening on your unit, it just happens. But don't forget about the power of communication. When I think about ants, I think about problem solving and innovation. Have you ever seen ants like all join together to build a bridge? It's like crazy. It's like I don't even know how they do it sometimes, but they're all connected, right? And they're helping to support each other. And it just blows my mind. And I think about perseverance and I think about determination. And some of this comes through to me from like my days as a childhood. I still remember I had a neighbor, and he used to just like really bother me when I was a kid. He would go up to an anthill and just like smush it down to nothing. And I would always feel so bad for the ants, right? But if something like that happens to a colony of ants, it doesn't matter. It doesn't bother them, right? They just pick up, do it again. They keep going, right? So we have a lot of lessons we can learn from ants. But I also think, when you think about this idea of how much they prepare and how strong they really are, and they go after those sort of bigger things, those things that are bigger than themselves, I think about how an average ant can lift 10 to 15 pounds of its own body weight. I mean, that like blows my mind. Like that's the strength of that little tiny ant that, we can kind of squish in a second, right? So it just proves to you in nature, like as human beings, we're designed with the same potential. We are stronger than what we believe in our minds. We just have to trust it. It's why sometimes you see these just unbelievable acts of strength when someone's adrenaline kicks in, right? They lift up a whole car and you're like, how did they do that, right? Because we have the same potential. But if we're not even looking at it, we're going to miss it. And you are designed the same way as a leader. So you can have the ability to prepare. You have the ability to exhibit that you have determination and that you're passionate and that you're a hard worker and you're resilient, and then you're stronger than what you believe. You have 100% the ability to do that. And I'm going to remind you, your job here in life school is to develop yourself as a leader, right? To be the best version of you. And you don't want to be that boss that's like that suckage boss that everybody's talking about, right? You want to be a leader where people are like thankful, where they're like, you know what? I would not leave this position. Do you know how many times in my position in leadership, because of the people I worked for, I turned offers down because I was like, I don't even care. You could wave a ton of money in front of me, right? I'm not leaving what I know to be true, right? I have the supportive network. I have somebody that's got my back, right? I have somebody that like makes me feel good every single day and builds me up. That is invaluable in an organization. And that's what you have to strive for. So in the meantime, while you're sort of developing your plan and you're really thinking about this, like I want to be an effective leader, and if you're still struggling to think about why should I do this, I'm going to remind you that the people that work for you experience pain and suffering every single day, firsthand, day in, day out, and they come back and they are going to need a leader that's going to help them to heal their hearts from what they experience so that they can be the best version of them, so they can continue to do the work they were designed to do here in life school, which is lead their teams effectively. That is what you're responsible to do. But you want your people to come to work and do the work they were designed to do, to heal people, to make them feel better through their words and their actions and the way they interact with one another. So while you're making your plan and you're waiting for yourself to achieve mastery, because you're practicing and practicing and practicing, I'm going to remind you, you can still make a difference. There's some general reminders that I don't want you to forget because these are equally important. Number one, don't forget the power in being that expert noticer. Like you should be looking every single day at those small, subtle changes that you're seeing in the person, right? What's going on behind that? How can you support that person? What can you do? Is it that they need laughter? Do they need physical support? What is it that you can do, right? Don't forget about the power of encouraging words. Like, think about our world right now, right? Where are you seeing the people that are encouraging and inspiring people to be the best version of them? It's not happening. People are tearing one another down. So when you're a leader and you encourage somebody and you remind them, you know what you do so well? Probably no one's ever told you this, but I see when family members come to you, you have unbelievable eye contact. You have such great ability to listen to them, to slow down your pace and be present. I wish everybody could do that to the degree that you do it. And I want you to know, keep doing that. That's extraordinary. And I'm going to look for opportunities where I want you to be able to teach something like this. Again, it's a great opportunity for you to build someone up with encouraging words because you noticed it. But guess what? You're never going to get there if you're sitting in your office and you're managing from afar and you don't know your people. It's just not going to happen. So third, don't forget to remind your team members that they need to promote self-care, right? The work they do is really hard every single day. So building in that daily routine, like we teach about in Healing the Hearts of Healthcare, right? The podcast for healthcare workers. It's about teaching them how to find opportunities every single day to heal their heart from everything they experience so they can come back tomorrow and do it again over and over again. And number 4, don't forget about the power of lightening their load. Like you can do that, right? If you have a call out and someone has to take a bigger assignment, you jumping in to help in a time that's needed is going to speak volumes. That person will interpret that as support and they're going to say, I am so thankful. Again, conversely, the flip side of that is they go home and they say to their partner, you are never going to believe what happened today. Not only did we have that call out and we were short and we had that medical emergency and all these things happened, guess where John was? John was in his office the whole day, right? So you have to think about these things because coming out throughout the day, and yes, you're going to have meetings, you're going to be busy and things are going to happen. I get it. It's healthcare. But I'm going to tell you, you have 5 minutes to get up, circulate around, bring joy, happiness, and connect with your teams. Everybody can do that multiple times a day. When you're going to get your cup of water or you're going to the restroom, you can build those practices in. And remember, if you want your teams to show compassion and care in any situation, then you as a leader must be compassionate and show that you care by being present for them. And I would take it one step further, which is you are developing your leadership skills so that you can be the best leader for them. You're going to be able to help support them and guide them. So don't be embarrassed to close those gaps and to really look at yourself from that lens of how do I make sure I am doing these things consistently every day? Because you don't want to fall into that trap of the Peter principle. You want to make sure that you're the best version of you so that you are prepared to help them be the best version of them. And don't be afraid to develop your authentic leadership style. You will hear me say this over and over again. People can spot phony a mile away. So if you are that leader where you need to control things or you need to tick off every box and go behind people, it's okay to be that in the short term. Now you want to develop some skills to lessen that control and build those trustful relationships and make sure that people are trained and they know the expectations and they know exactly how to do what they need to do. But in the absence of that, just telling somebody, listen, this is not about you. This is me. This is who I am. I'm trying to develop and get better in life school while I'm doing these things as well. But I'm going to remind you, this is important. It's important for people to know that you're trying to lead from a place that's authentic to you, because that's when you're going to show your greatest work, because you're not going to be something that you're not. So listen, I hope you learned something from this podcast today. I hope you thought about those Navy SEALs, and I hope you thought about those little ants, and I hope that you take the time to go on University of Pennsylvania's website and look for that brief strengths test. Listen, they got a ton of other tests on there. So once you get registered, you're going to be excited, because you're going to be opening all kinds of doorways and perceptions about yourself that you didn't even know existed. And again, these are all tools in your toolbox for you to be the best version of you. I look forward to seeing you on a future podcast, but don't forget, if you don't hear it enough, thank you for everything you do every single day as a leader. The work that you do matters. You are making a difference. And in healthcare, you developing your skills is just going to help you prepare the workforce to be agile and flexible and to come back again despite everything that happens to them. And never forget that. All right, goodbye, everybody.